Marcus Williams wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the familiar smell of motor oil filling his nostrils as he stepped back to admire his work. The ambulance engine hummed smoothly now, a far cry from the sputtering mess it had been just hours earlier. At 34, Marcus had spent the better part of his life with his hands buried in engines, but today felt different. Today he was risking everything. The emergency medical services depot was supposed to be closed at this hour. The sun had long since disappeared behind the Chicago skyline, casting long shadows across the vehicle bay. Marcus shouldn't have been there at all. But when he'd overheard the dispatch supervisor mention that Ambulance Unit 47 was out of commission due to engine failure, something inside him couldn't let it go. This wasn't just any ambulance. It was the one assigned to cover the South Side, where his 8-year-old daughter Emma went to school. Marcus had been working as a maintenance technician for the city's emergency services for 3 years now. It wasn't glamorous work, and the pay barely covered rent for their small apartment, but it was steady. After Emma's mother had walked out on them when Emma was just 2 years old, steady was exactly what Marcus needed. He couldn't afford to take risks, couldn't afford to make waves. Every decision he made had to consider Emma first. But tonight was different. Tonight, as he'd watched the mechanics shake their heads and declare the ambulance would need to wait until Monday for parts, Marcus thought about all the people who might need help over the weekend. He thought about Emma's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived just 3 blocks from the school. He thought about old Mr. Chen, who ran the corner store, where Emma bought her afternoon candy. He thought about all the families in their neighborhood who depended on emergency services being there when they needed them most. So he'd waited. He'd clocked out at 5 like everyone else, said goodbye to his coworkers, and picked up Emma from after-school care. They'd gone home, shared a dinner of leftover spaghetti, and he'd helped her with her homework, math problems that seemed to get harder every week. He'd tucked her into bed, read her favorite story about a brave princess who fixed everything that was broken in her kingdom, and kissed her goodnight. Then he'd come back. The security guard, Jimmy, was an old friend. They'd served together in the Army years ago, and Jimmy understood what it meant to want to help people. When Marcus explained what he wanted to do, Jimmy had looked the other way, pretending not to see Marcus slip back into the maintenance bay with his personal toolkit. The problem with the ambulance wasn't as complicated as the day shift had made, it seemed. The fuel injector was clogged, and there was a loose connection in the electrical system that was causing the engine to misfire. With the right tools and some patience, it was fixable. Marcus had learned to work on engines from his father, who'd run a small auto repair shop before a heart attack took him too young. Those skills had served Marcus well in the Army, and they served him well now. As he worked, Marcus found himself thinking about Emma. She was everything to him. The reason he got up every morning, the reason he pushed through the long days, and the tight budget and the loneliness that sometimes crept in during the quiet hours after she'd gone to bed. She was smart as a whip, always asking questions about how things worked, always wanting to help him fix things around their apartment. Sometimes he caught her watching him work with the same intense focus he remembered having as a boy in his father's shop. The engine turned over on the first try when he finished. The smooth, steady rumble was music to his ears. Marcus ran through a quick diagnostic check, testing all the systems, making sure everything was working properly. The ambulance was better than new. He'd actually improved the fuel efficiency and cleaned up some sloppy wiring that had probably been causing minor issues for months. He was just closing the hood when he heard footsteps echoing across the concrete floor of the vehicle bay. Marcus froze, his heart racing. It was nearly midnight. No one should have been there except Jimmy, and Jimmy was stationed at the front desk. The footsteps were deliberate, purposeful, getting closer. Well, what do we have here? The voice belonged to Robert Chen, the Deputy Director of Emergency Services. Marcus had only seen him from a distance before, a tall, thin man in his 50s who wore expensive suits and had a reputation for running a tight ship. Chen stepped into the circle of light cast by the work lamps Marcus had set up, his expression unreadable. Marcus's mouth went dry. This was it. This was how his steady job disappeared, how his carefully constructed life came crashing down. He thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in her bed, trusting that her dad would always be there to take care of her. "Sir, I can explain," Marcus began, but Chen held up a hand to stop him. "You're Marcus Williams, right? Maintenance tech hired 3 years ago?" Chen walked around the ambulance, running his finger along the pristine exterior, listening to the smooth engine idle. "Yes, sir." "And you decided to come in on your own time without authorization to fix a vehicle that my day shift mechanic said would be out of commission until Monday?" Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. He started calculating in his head how long it would take to find another job, whether his savings would last until then, what he would tell Emma. Chen opened the driver's door and climbed into the ambulance cab. He spent several minutes going through the systems checks, testing the radio, the lights, the sirens. When he climbed back out, his expression was still impossible to read. "This unit has been having intermittent issues for months," Chen said finally. "Problems that nobody could seem to pin down. You fixed those too, didn't you?" "I noticed some things while I was working on the main problem," Marcus admitted. "It seemed wrong to leave them broken." Chen nodded slowly, then pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was a short conversation. When Chen hung up, he looked directly at Marcus for the first time since arriving. "Pack up your tools, Williams, we need to talk." The walk to Chen's office felt like a funeral march. Marcus's tools clinked softly in his toolbox as he followed the deputy director through the empty hallways of the emergency services building. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that seemed to emphasize every worried line on Marcus's face. His mind raced through possible explanations, apologies, pleas for understanding, but none of them seemed adequate. Chen's office was exactly what Marcus had expected: clean, organized, with certificates and commendations covering one wall and a large window overlooking the vehicle bay. Chen gestured for Marcus to take a seat in one of the chairs facing his desk, then settled into his own chair with a heavy sigh. "Do you know why I was here tonight, Williams?" Chen asked, leaning back and studying Marcus with sharp, intelligent eyes. "No, sir. I was here because my daughter called me in tears. She's a paramedic, works for a private ambulance company across town. Tonight, one of their units broke down in the middle of a call. A heart attack victim. They had to wait for a backup, and by the time they got the man to the hospital, he was gone." Chen's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the pain in his eyes. "She called me asking why we can't keep our equipment running properly, why there always seem to be mechanical issues that leave people without help when they need it most." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He thought about Emma, about what it would be like to get a call like that about her someday. "So I came in to look at our maintenance logs, to see how many units we have out of service right now, to figure out what we're doing wrong." Chen pulled a thick folder from his desk drawer. "According to this, Unit 47 was supposed to be down until Monday, but when I walked through the bay, there it was, running perfectly." "Sir, I know I shouldn't have." "How long did it take you to diagnose and fix the problem?" Chen interrupted. "About 4 hours, sir, but I wasn't rushing. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect." Chen nodded and made a note on a pad of paper. "And the other issues you mentioned, the ones that have been causing intermittent problems?" "Those were mostly quick fixes. Loose connections, dirty filters, that sort of thing. Maybe another hour of work total. So in 5 hours, working alone with your own tools, you accomplished what my day shift couldn't accomplish in 2 days, with a full team and access to our parts inventory." Marcus wasn't sure if that was a question or a statement, so he remained silent. Chen opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. "Your personnel file makes for interesting reading, Williams. Army service, mechanical training, excellent performance reviews. Your supervisor, Tony Rodriguez, speaks very highly of your work. Says you're the most skilled technician he's ever worked with, but that you always stay in your lane, never volunteer for overtime, never make suggestions about improving procedures. I have a daughter, sir. I need to be home for her." "How old?" 8. Chen nodded. "And her mother?" "Not in the picture, sir. It's just Emma and me." For the first time since they'd sat down, Chen's expression softened slightly. "That's not easy. Raising a child alone, trying to balance work and family responsibilities." Marcus thought about the countless nights he'd stayed up late trying to make ends meet, the times he'd had to choose between buying Emma new shoes or fixing something in their apartment, the constant worry that he wasn't enough for her. No, sir, it's not. Tony tells me you've turned down several opportunities for advancement, supervisor positions, specialized training programs. Why? The supervisor positions would mean more hours, more travel. Emma needs me to be there when she gets home from school. And the training programs, I couldn't afford to be away for weeks at a time. Chen set the file aside and leaned forward. What you did tonight was completely against protocol. You entered a restricted area without authorization, worked on equipment without proper documentation, exposed the city to potential liability issues. Do you understand that? Marcus's heart sank. Yes, sir. It was also the kind of initiative and skill that this department desperately needs. Chen's tone shifted, becoming more thoughtful. We have a problem, Williams. Our equipment is aging. Our maintenance procedures are inefficient, and we're constantly dealing with units out of service when people need them most. What happened tonight with my daughter's call? That's not an isolated incident. Marcus wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but he sensed that his job might not be over after all. I've been looking for someone to help me overhaul our entire maintenance program. Chen continued. Someone with the technical skills to identify problems and the leadership ability to implement solutions. Someone who understands that when our equipment fails, people suffer. That sounds like an important job, sir. It would be a significant promotion. Maintenance supervisor position, with a team of 6 technicians reporting to you. 20% pay increase, better benefits, and a budget to actually fix things properly instead of just patching them together. Marcus felt a surge of excitement, quickly followed by familiar worry. What would the hours be like? That would be up to you. The position requires results, not face time. If you can keep our fleet running efficiently, I don't care if you work from home half the time. Chen smiled slightly. Though I suspect someone with your work ethic wouldn't take advantage of that flexibility. Sir, I'm flattered, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to supervise. Williams, in one night you did what my current maintenance team hasn't been able to do in months. You saw a problem, you found a solution, and you executed it perfectly. That's leadership. Marcus thought about Emma, about the story he'd read to her earlier about the princess who fixed everything that was broken. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez and Mr. Chen and all the people in their neighborhood who deserved to know that help would come when they called for it. There would be one condition, Chen said. What's that, sir? No more unauthorized midnight repairs. If you see a problem, you bring it to me directly. We do things by the book, but we do them right. Marcus couldn't help but smile. I can live with that condition, sir. Good. There's just one more thing. Chen's expression became serious again. The current maintenance supervisor, Tony Rodriguez, he's going to be upset about this. He's been in that position for 8 years, and he's not going to be happy about being replaced by one of his technicians. Marcus's smile faded. Tony had been good to him, had given him a chance when he needed it most. Sir, I don't want to hurt Tony. He's a good man. Tony is a good man, but he's not the right man for what we need to do. He'll be offered a transfer to another department with no loss of pay or benefits. The decision is ultimately his. Chen stood up. Think about it over the weekend, Williams. Let me know Monday morning if you want the job. As Marcus walked back through the empty building, his toolbox feeling lighter somehow, he thought about calling Emma's babysitter to let her know he might be a little later than expected. Then he remembered that Emma was safely asleep, and that tomorrow was Saturday, their day to work on projects together, to fix things around the apartment, to plan for the future. For the first time in years, that future was starting to look brighter. Saturday morning arrived with Emma bouncing on Marcus's bed at exactly 7:30, her dark curls a tangled mess, and her gap-toothed grin infectious even through his exhaustion. He hadn't slept much after getting home from his unexpected meeting, with Chen, his mind racing through possibilities and concerns in equal measure. Daddy, you promised we could work on my bike today, Emma announced, settling cross-legged on his bed with the confidence of someone who knew she was the center of someone's universe. That's right, Princess. Let me get some coffee first, okay? Marcus sat up, running his hands through his hair. The bike, a pink and purple creation that Emma had outgrown months ago, had been relegated to their tiny balcony with a bent front wheel that Marcus kept meaning to fix. As they ate breakfast together at their small kitchen table, Emma chattered about school, about her best friend Sophia, about the book report she had due next week. Marcus found himself studying her face, thinking about the conversation with Chen. A 20% pay increase would mean so much for them. A bigger apartment, maybe in a better school district. The ability to say yes when Emma asked for dance lessons or wanted to join the soccer team. But it would also mean more responsibility, more stress, and the potential for longer hours, even if Chen had said otherwise. Marcus had learned not to trust promises about work-life balance. Too many jobs started with assurances about family time and ended with emergency calls at all hours. "Daddy, you're doing that thinking face again," Emma observed, syrup dripping from her fork as she pointed it at him. "What thinking face?" "The one where your eyebrows scrunch up and you stare at nothing. Mama used to do it too before she left." The casual mention of her mother still caught Marcus off guard sometimes. Emma didn't remember much about Sarah. She'd been so young when Sarah decided that being a mother wasn't what she wanted, but she remembered enough to make connections that sometimes broke Marcus's heart. "I'm just thinking about work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." They spent the morning working on the bike together on their balcony. Emma proved to be an excellent assistant, handing Marcus tools and asking detailed questions about how everything worked. Her curiosity reminded him of himself at that age, sitting in his father's shop and learning that most problems could be solved if you were patient and methodical. "Why did the wheel get bent, Daddy? Remember when you hit that pothole on Maple Street last month? Sometimes when something hits hard enough, it changes shape. But you can fix it, right?" "I can fix it." Marcus used a spoke wrench to gradually true the wheel, checking the alignment carefully. "But it takes time. You have to make small adjustments and check your progress, then make more small adjustments. Like how you taught me to tie my shoes? Practice until it's perfect?" Exactly like that. As they worked, Marcus found himself thinking about the ambulance from the night before, about the systematic way he'd approached each problem. Maybe that was what Chen had seen. Not just technical skill, but the patience to do things right. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus heard the knock and opened the door to find Tony Rodriguez standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable and older than his 52 years. "Hey, Marcus. Sorry to bother you at home." "No bother at all, Tony. Come in." Marcus stepped aside, noticing that Emma had suddenly become very interested in her coloring book at the kitchen table, though he could tell she was listening to every word. Tony declined the offer of coffee, but accepted a seat on the couch. "I guess you know why I'm here." Marcus nodded. "Chen told me he'd talk to you." 28 years I've worked for the city, Marcus. 8 of those as maintenance supervisor. And this morning I get called in to be told that I'm being offered a transfer to the parks department because you've been promoted to my job. The pain in Tony's voice was obvious, and Marcus felt his stomach tighten with guilt. "Tony, I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know the position was available. Chen told me what you did last night. Unit 47. Tony shook his head. "That was good work, Marcus, better than good. But going around the chain of command, working unauthorized hours, that's not how things are supposed to work." "I know. I just saw a problem and wanted to fix it. And that's exactly what Chen said you'd say." Tony was quiet for a moment, looking around the small apartment, taking in the careful way everything was organized. The stack of Emma's school papers on the counter, the photo of Marcus and Emma at last year's school carnival. "You know, I've got grandkids now, 3 of them. And I look at Emma over there, pretending to color but really listening to our conversation. And I think about what I would want for my grandkids if they were in her situation." Marcus glanced over at Emma, who was indeed listening intently while trying to look busy. "The truth is, Marcus, I've known for a while that I wasn't the right guy for the job anymore. The equipment is getting more complex. The budget pressures are getting worse, and I've been coasting. Doing enough to get by, but not enough to make real improvements." Tony leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "What you did last night, that's what the department needs, someone who cares enough to come in on their own time to make sure people get help when they need it. Tony, you've been good to me. You gave me a chance when I needed it. And now I'm giving you advice. Take the promotion, Marcus. Your daughter needs it, the department needs it, and frankly, you've earned it. Tony stood up. The parks department job is actually better hours, less stress. Maybe it's time for me to slow down a little, spend more time with those grandkids. After Tony left, Emma abandoned any pretense of coloring and climbed onto the couch next to Marcus. Daddy, are you getting a new job? Maybe, sweetheart. It would be a promotion, more responsibility, but also more money. Would you still have time to help me with my homework? Always. That's the most important part of my day. Emma snuggled against his side, and Marcus wrapped his arms around her. Daddy? Yeah, Princess? I think you should take the new job. Mrs. Rodriguez said that when we're good at something, we should use it to help people. And you're really good at fixing things. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a legal pad, making lists, pros and cons, risks and opportunities, all the careful calculations that had governed his decisions since becoming a single father. But as he wrote, he kept thinking about Tony's visit, about Emma's simple wisdom, about the ambulance humming smoothly in the service bay. He thought about Chen's daughter, crying because someone had died while waiting for help that should have been available. He thought about the princess in Emma's favorite story, who fixed everything that was broken in her kingdom, not because it was safe or easy, but because it was right. By the time he finished writing, Marcus knew what his answer would be. Sunday morning brought another early wake-up call from Emma, but this time Marcus was ready for it. They had plans: breakfast, at their favorite diner, a trip to the park, maybe a movie if they had time. But first, Marcus had a phone call to make. Chen answered on the second ring. Mr. Chen? It's Marcus Williams. I've thought about your offer. And? Marcus looked over at Emma, who was trying to braid her own hair with limited success. I'd like to accept the position, sir. When do I start? Monday morning arrived with a mix of excitement and anxiety that Marcus hadn't felt since his first day of work 3 years ago. Emma seemed to sense the importance of the day, eating her cereal without complaint and getting dressed without the usual negotiations about which shoes to wear. You look fancy, Daddy, she observed as Marcus adjusted his tie, one of only 2 he owned, in their bathroom mirror. First day as supervisor, got to look the part. Are you nervous? Marcus considered lying, giving her the confident answer he thought she wanted to hear. But Emma had always been able to see through him, and honesty had been one of the foundations of their relationship since she was old enough to understand it. A little bit, yeah. It's okay to be nervous. Mrs. Rodriguez says that means you care about doing a good job. The maintenance department felt different when Marcus walked in that morning. Same concrete floors, same smell of oil and metal, same fluorescent lighting, but everything had shifted. The 5 technicians who had been his colleagues on Friday were now his employees, and the dynamics were complicated. James Patterson, the oldest member of the team at 58, barely looked up when Marcus entered. Patterson had been with the city longer than anyone, and had probably expected to be considered for Tony's position. Maria Santos and David Kim seemed cautiously optimistic, offering congratulations and questions about Marcus's plans. The 2 newest hires, Tom Bradley and Lisa Chen, appeared relieved. They'd worked most closely with Marcus and knew his reputation for thoroughness and fairness. All right, everyone, gather around, Marcus said, his voice sounding strange in his own ears with its new authority. I know this transition is awkward for all of us. Last week I was turning wrenches right alongside you, and today I'm supposed to be telling you what to do. Patterson finally looked up from the engine he'd been working on, his expression neutral but watchful. Here's how I see it, Marcus continued. This department has good people and important work to do. Our job is to make sure that when someone calls 911, the ambulance that shows up actually runs. That's not complicated, but it's critical. He pulled out a clipboard with the weekend service reports. Over the weekend, we had 3 units go out of service. Unit 23 had a transmission problem that could have been prevented with better preventive maintenance. Unit 15 had an electrical issue that's been intermittent for 2 months, but nobody took the time to track down the root cause. And Unit 8 failed inspection because the exhaust system wasn't properly maintained. Marcus looked around the room, making eye contact with each team member. "We can do better than this. We're going to do better than this." "Easy to say," Patterson muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hard to do when we're understaffed and underfunded." "You're right, it is hard. But that's exactly why we need to be smarter about how we work." Marcus walked over to the large whiteboard that dominated one wall of the break room. "I want to try something new. Instead of just responding to problems after they happen, we're going to start predicting them." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined his vision for a preventive maintenance program that would track each vehicle's performance patterns, identify potential problems before they caused failures, and schedule repairs during off-peak hours when spare units were available. Maria raised her hand. "This sounds good in theory, Marcus, but when do we have time for all this tracking and analyzing? We're already working flat out just keeping up with current repairs." "That's the beauty of it," Marcus said, warming to his subject. "If we prevent problems before they happen, we'll actually have less emergency repair work. Instead of spending all our time in crisis mode, we'll be able to work more efficiently." Lisa looked skeptical. "How do we know this will actually work?" Marcus thought about Unit 47, about the systematic approach that had not only fixed the immediate problem but identified and resolved several other issues that would have caused failures down the road. "Because I've seen it work. We just need to be methodical about it." He turned back to the whiteboard and started drawing a flowchart. Every vehicle gets a baseline diagnostic when it comes in for routine service. We document everything: performance specs, wear patterns, any anomalies. Then we track changes over time and flag vehicles that are trending toward problems. Patterson stood up and walked closer to the whiteboard, studying Marcus's diagram. "You know, we tried something like this about 5 years ago. Management said it was too complicated, took too much time away from actual repairs." "What happened to that program?" "Tony killed it after 6 months. Said the paperwork wasn't worth the effort." Marcus nodded. "Well, I'm not Tony, and the situation has changed. Chen is fully behind this approach. He's the one who told me that preventing problems is better than fixing them after people get hurt." The mention of Chen's name seemed to shift the mood in the room. Everyone knew that the deputy director didn't get involved in day-to-day maintenance issues unless something was seriously wrong. "Look," Marcus said, sensing the change. "I know this is different from how we've done things. I know some of you might be thinking that I'm just the new guy trying to make his mark, but I've been working alongside all of you for 3 years. I've seen how good you are at what you do, and I've seen how frustrated you get when we're constantly fighting fires instead of preventing them." Tom Bradley, who'd been quiet throughout the discussion, finally spoke up. "What do you need from us?" "I need you to give this a chance. I need you to trust that the extra effort we put in now will make our jobs easier in the long run. And I need you to tell me when something isn't working because I don't have all the answers." The rest of the morning was spent working through the practical details of implementation. Marcus assigned each technician to take baseline readings on specific vehicles, established a reporting system that wouldn't be too burdensome, and set up weekly team meetings to review progress and address problems. By lunchtime, Marcus felt cautiously optimistic. The team seemed willing to try his approach even if some were more enthusiastic than others. But as he sat in his new office, a small room adjacent to the main maintenance bay that had previously been used for storage, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was forgetting something important. The realization hit him at 2:47 p.m. when his phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. "Mr. Williams, Emma says you were supposed to pick her up for her dentist appointment today. She's waiting in the office. Please call if there's been a change of plans." Marcus's blood ran cold. The dentist appointment, he'd scheduled at 3 weeks ago, had written it on his calendar, had specifically arranged to leave work early. In all the excitement and anxiety of his first day as supervisor, he'd completely forgotten. He grabbed his keys and practically ran to his car, calling the school as he drove to explain that he was on his way. Emma was waiting in the main office. When he arrived, her backpack clutched in her lap and her expression carefully neutral. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Marcus said as soon as they were in the car. "I got caught up at work and lost track of time." "It's okay, Daddy. Mrs. Patterson said sometimes adults forget things when they have big changes at work. The understanding in her voice made it worse somehow. Emma had learned early in life to be accommodating, to not make demands that might add to the stress of their precarious situation. It was a survival skill that no 8-year-old should need. The dentist's office was able to fit them in despite their tardiness, and Emma's checkup went well. No cavities, though she would need braces in a few years. As they drove home afterward, Marcus found himself thinking about the balance he'd been trying to maintain for years, and how quickly it could be disrupted. "Daddy, are you going to forget things more now that you have the important job?" The question was asked with the directness that only children possess, cutting straight to the heart of Marcus's fears. "I hope not, Princess, but if I ever do forget something important, you need to remind me, okay? You're the most important part of my life, and I never want you to think that work matters more than you do." "I know that, Daddy, but maybe we should make a special calendar for just you and me things so work can't make you forget." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with 2 calendars, his work schedule and a new one dedicated entirely to Emma's activities, appointments, and their time together. It was a simple solution, but sometimes the simple solutions were the most effective. As he wrote Emma's upcoming school events and activities on the new calendar, Marcus thought about the day's successes and challenges. The maintenance program was off to a good start. His team seemed willing to follow his lead, and Chen had stopped by in the afternoon to express satisfaction with the progress. But the forgotten appointment had shaken him. It was a reminder that no promotion, no matter how beneficial, was worth compromising his relationship with Emma. Finding the right balance would be an ongoing challenge, requiring the same methodical, systematic approach he was applying to the maintenance program. Some things, Marcus reflected, were more important than fixing ambulances, but if he could succeed at both, if he could build a better maintenance program while still being the father Emma needed, then maybe this promotion would turn out to be the best thing that had ever happened to both of them. 3 months into his new role, Marcus was beginning to see the results of his systematic approach. The preventive maintenance program was working better than anyone had expected, including himself. Vehicle downtime had decreased by 30%, and they hadn't had a single emergency breakdown in over 6 weeks. Even Patterson, initially the most skeptical team member, had admitted that the new system made their jobs easier and more predictable. But success at work came with unexpected complications. Marcus found himself being invited to more meetings, asked to consult on budget decisions, and consulted about fleet management strategies that went far beyond his original job description. Chen seemed pleased with his performance and had hinted at even greater responsibilities in the future. The morning everything changed started like any other. Marcus arrived at work at 7:30, reviewed the overnight service reports, and was pleased to see that all units were operational and ready for duty. Emma had left for school with her usual kiss goodbye and reminder about her parent-teacher conference that afternoon, an event that was safely recorded on both his work calendar and their special family calendar. At 9:15, Marcus was in the middle of explaining a diagnostic procedure to Tom Bradley when the emergency alert system activated. All maintenance staff were required to respond immediately to the vehicle bay, where 2 ambulances had just arrived with what looked like significant damage. The scene in the bay was chaotic. Unit 19 had a crumpled front end and a spider-webbed windshield. Unit 22 had damage to its rear doors and what appeared to be a transmission leak spreading across the concrete floor. Both paramedic crews were talking rapidly to their supervisors while gesturing toward the vehicles. "What happened?" Marcus asked Rodriguez, the shift supervisor. "Multi-vehicle accident on the interstate." Both units were responding to the same call when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit them both. "Crews are okay, but both vehicles are out of commission until further notice." Marcus walked around both ambulances, mentally cataloging the damage and calculating repair times. Unit 19 would need bodywork, a new windshield, and possibly frame alignment, at least 2 weeks if they could get parts quickly. Unit 22's transmission damage was more serious. It might be more cost-effective to replace the entire unit. "How many spare vehicles do we have available?" Marcus asked. 2. But one of those is scheduled for its annual inspection tomorrow, and the other has been having intermittent electrical problems that we haven't been able to pin down. Marcus felt his stomach drop. In the old system, this would have been a crisis. 2 ambulances out of service with only questionable backup units available meant that response times would suffer and coverage would be dangerously thin. But as he looked at the damaged vehicles, he realized something that made him smile despite the circumstances. "Actually, we're in better shape than we think," he told Rodriguez. "Give me 2 hours." The next 2 hours were a masterclass in the preventive maintenance system Marcus had implemented. Because they'd been tracking performance data on every vehicle in the fleet, he knew exactly which units were operating at peak efficiency and which ones had upcoming maintenance windows. More importantly, he knew which vehicles could be safely pushed beyond their normal service intervals without risking breakdown. Marcus quickly reassigned 3 vehicles from their normal rotation, extending the service intervals on 2 others that were performing well above specifications, and pulled 1 unit from scheduled maintenance that could safely wait another week for non-critical repairs. By 11:30, they had full fleet coverage restored with vehicles that were actually more reliable than the ones they'd lost. "How did you do that?" Rodriguez asked, clearly impressed. "Data," Marcus replied simply. "When you know how every vehicle is really performing, instead of just guessing based on mileage and age, you can make informed decisions about deployment." Word of Marcus's quick thinking spread rapidly through the department. By afternoon, Chen was asking for a detailed report on the fleet management system, and by the end of the week, Marcus found himself presenting his approach to the entire emergency services leadership team. The presentation went well. Better than well, actually. Marcus found that his systematic, methodical approach to problem-solving translated naturally to explaining complex systems to executives. He used charts and graphs to show how preventive maintenance had improved fleet reliability, reduced costs, and most importantly, improved response times to emergency calls. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of," Chen told the group. "Williams, I want you to develop a comprehensive fleet management strategy that we can implement department-wide. Not just ambulances, but fire trucks, police vehicles, everything." After the meeting, Chen asked Marcus to stay behind. "That was impressive work, Williams. You've exceeded every expectation I had when I promoted you." "Thank you, sir. The team has really embraced the new approach. I have something else I want to discuss with you. The city is creating a new position, Director of Fleet Operations. It would oversee maintenance for all city vehicles, not just emergency services. Police, fire, public works, everything. It's a significant step up. Department head level, substantial salary increase, comprehensive benefits package." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. A department head position would mean financial security beyond anything he'd imagined possible. Emma could have everything she needed. The best schools, extracurricular activities, college savings. Everything a parent wanted to provide for their child. The job would require some travel, Chen continued. Conferences, training programs, meetings with other city departments. And there would be evening meetings with city council, budget committees, that sort of thing. But the compensation would reflect the increased responsibility. "How much travel?" Marcus asked. "Maybe 1 week per month on average. Some months more, some less. And the evening meetings would probably average 2 or 3 per week." Marcus's excitement began to temper as he calculated what this would mean for Emma. 1 week per month, away plus multiple evening meetings each week, would fundamentally change their relationship. Instead of being there for homework help and bedtime stories, he'd be managing budgets and attending conferences. "It sounds like an incredible opportunity, sir. But," Chen had clearly picked up on Marcus's hesitation, "I need to think about how it would affect my daughter." Chen nodded slowly. "Of course. Take all the time you need to decide. But Marcus, opportunities like this don't come along very often. You've proven that you have the skills and vision for a role like this. The question is whether you're ready to take that next step." That afternoon, Marcus left work early for Emma's parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Rodriguez had nothing but good things to say about Emma's progress. She was reading above grade level, excelling in math, and showing Natural leadership qualities with her classmates. She's a special little girl, Mr. Williams. Very mature for her age, but in a good way. She's responsible and caring, and she clearly adores you. She's had to grow up faster than I would have liked, Marcus admitted. Perhaps, but she's thriving. And I think a lot of that has to do with the stability and love you provide. She talks about you constantly. How you help her with projects, how you fix things together, how you always keep your promises to her. As they walked home from school, Emma chattered about her day, about the book she was reading, about the science fair project they were supposed to work on together. Marcus found himself studying her face, thinking about Chen's offer and what it would mean for moments like this. Daddy, you have your thinking face again. Sorry, sweetheart. Just work stuff. Good work stuff or bad work stuff? I'm not sure yet. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad, just as he had months earlier when deciding whether to accept the supervisor position. But this decision felt infinitely more complex. The financial benefits of the director position were undeniable. Emma could have everything he'd ever wanted to give her and more. But money couldn't replace time, couldn't substitute for presence, couldn't provide the daily connection that had been the foundation of their relationship since she was 2 years old. He thought about Emma's mother, who had left because she felt trapped by the responsibilities of parenthood. Was he making the same mistake in reverse, letting his responsibilities as a parent limit his professional growth? Was he cheating Emma out of opportunities by prioritizing their time together over financial advancement? Or was he right to believe that Emma needed him more than she needed the things his increased salary could buy? As he wrestled with the decision, Marcus realized that this wasn't just about a job offer. It was about defining what kind of father he wanted to be, what kind of life he wanted to build with Emma, and what sacrifices he was willing to make for both their futures. The answer, when it came to him, was both surprising and obvious. But implementing it would require a conversation with Chen that might end his rapid career advancement before it really began. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Chen's office with a proposal that had kept him awake most of the night. He'd rehearsed his presentation multiple times, but as he sat across from the deputy director, he felt the familiar nervousness that came with taking a risk that could change everything. I've thought about the director of fleet operations position, Marcus began, and I'm honored that you'd consider me for it, but I have a counter-proposal. Chen raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. What if we created a hybrid position? Director of fleet operations, but structured differently. Instead of travel and evening meetings, what if we focused on developing systems and training that could be implemented locally? I could create comprehensive maintenance protocols, train department supervisors, and build reporting systems that would give you the fleet-wide oversight you need without requiring constant travel. Marcus pulled out a folder he'd prepared. I've outlined how this could work. Regional supervisors would handle day-to-day operations in their departments, but they'd all use standardized systems and report centrally. I'd be responsible for developing those systems, training the supervisors, and analyzing the data to identify department-wide improvements. Chen studied the proposal for several minutes, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and cost projections. Marcus had anticipated most of the questions and had solid answers backed by data from his success with the emergency services fleet. This is interesting, Williams. But why are you essentially trying to negotiate yourself out of a promotion? I'm not trying to avoid the promotion, sir. I'm trying to find a way to excel at it while still being the father my daughter needs me to be. Chen set the proposal aside and leaned back in his chair. Tell me about your daughter. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus found himself talking about Emma in ways he rarely did with colleagues. He talked about her curiosity, her intelligence, her resilience in the face of having only one parent. He talked about the promises he'd made to himself when her mother left, about the delicate balance he'd maintained between providing for her financially and being present for her emotionally. She's 8 now, Marcus concluded. And these are the years that matter most. The years when I can still help her with homework and hear about her day and be the person she turns to when she has problems. If I take a position that requires me to travel and work evenings regularly, I'll miss that. And once those years are gone, I can't get them back. Chen was quiet for a long moment. You know, I mentioned that my daughter is a paramedic. What I didn't mention is that we barely spoke for about 5 years because I was so focused on advancing my career that I missed most of her childhood. I was always traveling, always in meetings, always putting work first because I thought that was how I provided for my family. What changed? She got engaged, and she asked her stepfather to walk her down the aisle instead of me. That's when I realized that all the financial security I'd provided couldn't make up for not being there when she needed me. Chen picked up the proposal again. Your hybrid approach is actually more innovative than the traditional director model. And frankly, it might be more effective. Over the next hour, they refined the proposal together. The position would still be at the director level, with corresponding salary and benefits, but it would be structured around developing and implementing systems rather than managing day-to-day operations. Marcus would work standard hours most days with occasional evening meetings that could be scheduled around Emma's activities. There's one more thing, Chen said as they were finalizing the details. I want you to present this proposal to the city council next week. If they approve it, the position is yours. The city council meeting was held on a Tuesday evening, which meant that Emma came with him to City Hall. She sat in the back of the council chambers with a coloring book and her homework occasionally, looking up to watch her father present his proposal to the 7 council members. Marcus's presentation was clear, concise, and backed by compelling data. He showed how his preventive maintenance approach had improved emergency services fleet performance, outlined how the same principles could be applied citywide, and demonstrated the potential cost savings and efficiency improvements. Mr. Williams, Councilwoman Martinez asked, "This hybrid director position is unusual. Most department heads in the city work traditional schedules with significant travel requirements. Why should we make an exception in this case?" Marcus glanced back at Emma, who was watching intently despite pretending to focus on her coloring. "Because the best solutions aren't always the traditional solutions," he replied. "The preventive maintenance program I developed works because it focuses on preventing problems rather than just responding to them. This director position is designed the same way, to prevent fleet management problems before they become crises, rather than just managing crises after they occur. And you believe you can accomplish this without the traditional management structure? I believe I can accomplish it better without the traditional structure. When you're developing systems and training protocols, you need focused time to analyze data and create comprehensive solutions. Constant travel and evening meetings would actually interfere with that kind of deep, systematic work." The council voted unanimously to approve the position. As they walked out of City Hall together, Emma slipped her hand into Marcus's. "Daddy, did you get the job?" "I got a job, sweetheart. A really good one. Will you still be home to help me with my homework? Every single day. And we can still work on projects together on weekends? Every single weekend." Emma smiled her gap-toothed grin. "Then it's the perfect job." 6 months later, Marcus's fleet management system was being implemented across all city departments. Vehicle downtime was down 40% citywide. Maintenance costs had decreased by nearly a quarter, and 3 other cities had requested consultations about implementing similar systems. But for Marcus, the real measure of success wasn't in the performance metrics or the recognition from city leadership. It was in the daily routines that remained unchanged: picking Emma up from school, helping with homework at their kitchen table, reading bedtime stories, and working on weekend projects together. The promotion had changed their financial situation dramatically. They'd moved to a larger apartment in a better neighborhood. Emma was taking piano lessons and had joined the soccer team, and Marcus had started a college savings account that grew substantially each month. But the foundation of their relationship, the time they spent together, the conversations they shared, the trust they'd built, remained exactly the same. One evening, as Marcus was tucking Emma into bed, she looked up at him with the serious expression she got when she was thinking about important things. "Daddy, remember when you fixed that ambulance and got in trouble?" "I remember. I'm glad you did that." "Why's that, princess?" "Because it showed everyone that you're really good at fixing things." But you were already good at the most important thing. What's that? Being my daddy? Marcus kissed her forehead and turned off the light, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this point. He'd started that night 3 months ago, thinking he was just fixing an ambulance to help people in his neighborhood. He'd had no idea that he was actually fixing his entire future. But Emma was right. He'd already been good at the most important thing. The promotion, the recognition, the financial security were all wonderful, but they were just additions to the life he and Emma had already built together. Sometimes Marcus reflected as he cleaned up Emma's homework materials and prepared for another day of managing the city's fleet operations. The best way to move forward was to make sure you never lost sight of what you were trying to protect. And sometimes, when you took care of the most important things first, everything else just fell into place.